What's up, Book Talk? I have recently finished Toll the Hounds by Steven Erikson, and without any further ado, I'm just going to tell you right now, I gave it a 10. This is one of the best fantasy books I've ever read, and it's probably my third favorite book of the year. Yeah, it's top three. I mean, this book is just straight up awesome. And I'm going to explain why immediately. No beating around the bush in this video, just straight fire, right? First of all, this book is different than the other Malazan books, because up to this point, Malazan has been this dark but epic fantasy. It has been kind of reminiscent of Homer with the Iliad and the Odyssey, or something like Beowulf, where it's all these characters that are, bigger than life, and, things happen, and they're dark, and they're messed up and stuff, but oh man, there's a lot of epic action. This has a different flavor. This is much more in line with a Shakespearean tragedy. The wordplay in this, the way that Erikson flexes how great his prose can be, how great he is at just getting into the human emotion of, sorrow, of having lost a loved one, of dealing with, the 5 stages of grief. It is incredible. This book is like the perfect mixture of tragedy and comedy. This is so good that it's hard to explain without spoilers. So I'm going to at least explain the narrative device in this, the framing, if you will, for this book, because I think it's important to understand that this book is even narratively very different than the other ones. There's this character Malazan named Krape, and Krape is this borderline omniscient, just fat little funny guy. And this fat little funny guy, at the beginning or end of almost every chapter, kind of gives you a brief glance over of what's happening in the world, and I think Erikson put it in here just to flex how good of a writer he is, because, man, it is incredibly poetic. It is incredibly poignant. Erikson, if you've read up to this point, you already know he's good with his words. The dude is a wordsmith. He knows how to paint a scene, but man, he goes extra hard in this book. So if you are a fan of prose, and you are a fan of Erikson, you better prepare for your freaking socks to be knocked off, dude, because this is incredible from just a language perspective. I mean, the words that he uses in here, seriously, mind-blowing. Another thing that this book does so well is something I kind of briefly touched on, but it deals with grief. This book, from what I understand, was written briefly after Steven Erikson lost his father, and he uses this book to express and analyze the different stages of grief that we humans experience. And you will experience grief in this book on some level. This book is sad. This book is seriously, and I mean this as someone who does not cry over books, a tearjerker. I choked up a few times reading this bad boy, because it's just built different, okay? It's just built different. This book is just incredible at ripping feelings out of your body and making you experience them. So just get ready to maybe shed some tears. Also, this probably has one of the greatest final acts in all of fantasy, and I'm not kidding about that. If A Memory of Light is my favorite, and then I'm gonna say this might be right here. It might be right here. A Memory of Light is my favorite final act in any fantasy series I've ever read. Toll the Hounds is right up there. This last quarter of a book, some of the best fantasy I've ever read. I'm not gonna spoil it, but there are sequences in this book where chapter after chapter, Erikson just tops himself somehow, and it's epic. The action is so well done, and the way he describes it is so brilliant. It is just unbelievable what this dude is able to do within a singular chapter. And there is just this convergence of powers coming together in Darujistan where I wish I could spoil it because it's so brilliant. But also, because it's so brilliant, I don't want to spoil it for anyone who hasn't read this book. So if you want to watch a spoiler-filled review, I'll have one on my YouTube channel. But anyways, getting back to my point before I, just completely lose myself here. This book is just awesome. This book has, seriously, I think, the best action in this series so far. And this series is filled with incredible action set pieces. This book has probably some of the best, in my personal opinion, philosophical musings up to this point. Erikson really flexes the fact that he gets humans. He gets it. And he delivers it in a way that will have you genuinely thinking about how we deal with sorrow, how we deal with death, how we deal with grief, and how we, as those who remain here on earth, are survivors. And if that doesn't motivate you to read this book, I don't know what will. Because sorrow and grief is a human experience, and Erikson shows it off. It is a universal experience to us. And the way that he writes about it is incredibly nuanced and brilliant, and it will tug at your heartstrings, especially if you have lost a loved one. Besides that, I just don't know what else to say. This book has incredible action. It has incredible comedy. Probably the best comedy in the series so far. And that is a high compliment because the series is very funny. It has incredible drama. It has incredible tragedy. There are multiple moments where you are going to need a Kleenex to wipe your eyes. There are going to be some incredible moments where you might actually physically cheer. So, if that is not an endorsement for this book, if that is not an endorsement for this absolutely brilliant series behind my head, I don't know what is. I think, and I'm going to say this, and I'm going to mean it. I think everyone should give this series a chance. It is not going to work for everyone. This series is dense. It's complicated. There's a lot of moving pieces. It is very different than traditional epic fantasy. There is nothing on the market like Malazan. But if you like this series, if you get into it and you enjoy it, you better prepare yourself, because you are about to experience one of the greatest fantasy series of all time. And once you get to this bad boy, you're going to experience one of the greatest fantasy books and one of the greatest fantasy series of all time. So yeah, I'm going to give it a 10. Please, just for the love of God, read this. For the love of God, read this, because for Hood's sake, dude, this is incredible. This is just... that's all I got.